Turn first to the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee. Senator, thank you so much. What is your understanding at this hour of where the Iran nuclear talks stand?
Well, I think, Bob, that we're very close to a political agreement. I talked to Secretary Kerry on Thursday and Vice President Biden on Thursday. It appears that we're close to a political agreement. I think most people understand that that is sort of a broad framework, and that the final deal would be arrived at with all the details, the annexes, and those types of things by the end of June.
Last week, 47 Republicans in the Senate signed a letter and sent it to the Iranian leaders, telling them to be wary of signing a deal with the Obama administration unless the Congress approves the deal. Now, you did not sign that letter. What I want to ask you is, are you for a deal, or are you just want to see that the Senate approves it?
Well, look, Bob, I don't know of anyone that doesn't want a negotiated agreement with Iran that is a good deal, one that will stand the test of time. I think the concern has been from day one that we keep moving from our initial position, the P5+1, towards Iran's position. And so there's a concern that the administration cares more about making a deal versus the right deal. I think you know that one of the things that brought Iran to the table were the congressionally mandated sanctions. There are the UN security sanctions, there's executive sanctions, but Congress played a vital role in getting Iran to the table. And so what we'd like to see happening, and what Ranking Member Menendez, myself, and many others on both sides of the aisle have joined together in seeking, is to ensure that before any deal is implemented, that Congress has the ability to weigh in on the front end before the congressionally mandated sanctions that we put in place are taken off the table and suspended ad infinitum. So that's where we are. There is concern about the type of deal that we're negotiating, but I don't know of anyone that wouldn't like to see this come to a good end by an arrangement that would keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. But the question, obviously, is the substance of this, and great concern with what the trend is towards Iran's position.
Do you think that that letter that the Republicans signed, did it complicate this in any way?
Look, Bob, there's been a lot of drama around this issue, and, you know, I didn't think that it was something that was productive towards the end that I'm seeking, and that is, if there's an arrangement, we appropriately weigh in. But look, there's been a lot of drama back and forth in both places. Obviously, the administration and Israel are more estranged than ever. There have been a lot of issues, but look, we're moving towards what it looks like a deal. I think that the vast majority of people on both sides of the aisle are very sober and thoughtful about this. And what we cannot do is let drama take us off our course of, again, Congress playing its appropriate role. It has been fascinating, Bob. I mean, I wake up every day trying to do everything I can to move foreign policy ahead, to work with everyone. And I've never seen such resistance by an administration towards a responsible role for Congress. And I think that's obviously created some of the drama that you're referring to right now. It's unprecedented. And people who've looked at the piece of legislation that we've put forth have said, why wouldn't the administration embrace that? Because if Congress were to embrace the deal with Iran, it has much better chance of standing the test of time. What's going to happen, I fear, first of all, what I fear most is us entering into an arrangement that really allows Iran to get a nuclear weapon and, by the way, releases $130 billion of resources to them to continue to carry out the operations like we're seeing in Yemen, but we've seen in Syria and so many other places. So I fear that. But what I also fear is that they're going to negotiate a deal, and the way they go about it, that it ends up being the central element, if you will, in this presidential campaign, because they didn't get American buy-in, and instead of doing something that ends up resolving an issue, it becomes even more unresolved.
Do you think this is all the fault of the administration? You don't think that some of the tactics the Republicans have used might have added to this friction here?
Well, look, I don't think anybody, when you get into a situation like this, I don't think any group has acted in a perfect manner. Look, as I mentioned, there are a lot of tensions, a lot of drama. But let's face it, I mean, they've been pushing Congress away from this from day one. So this has gone back for a long time. And please remember, I mean, Bob Menendez has signed on. We've got Chuck Schumer is supportive of this legislation. So Bob, regardless of some of the drama, the fact is we have a building, strong bipartisan consensus that at the end of the day, before anything is implemented, Congress should at least be able to say grace over the fact that these sanctions that we put in place that brought Iran to the table, we ought to be able to analyze this deal, as is the norm, and say grace up or down as to whether we think those sanctions ought to be removed.
What happens, Senator, if there is no deal? Obviously, nobody wants a bad deal. But let's say the two sides just can't get together. What do you do then?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things that can happen. Number one, we do have JPOA in place, the interim deal, and it could continue for some time. I mean,
Which keeps the sanctions on? Is that what you're talking about?
It keeps the existing sanctions in place, although there is some sanctions relief for Iran, okay, but it stays in for a while. I mean, that's one outcome.
Don't the Iranians then just press ahead with their nuclear program? Why wouldn't they?
Well, I don't think that's necessarily the case. The other is Congress reacts and puts in place the sort of the Menendez-Kirk piece, which you know ratchets up sanctions and puts even more pressure in place. But look, at the end of the day, I do think that this deadline and the fact that the P5+1 negotiations about 7 weeks ago gave way to a bilateral negotiation between the United States and Iran. Now all the groups are back involved, but I think we saw at that time, Bob, a huge movement, if you will, towards Iran's position. And, you know, as we see them not becoming more responsible in how they're dealing with so many issues in the region, what we see them doing is ratcheting up their activities. So, again, I hope we end up with a good deal that stands the test of time. Negotiations are the very best way of doing that. The other options are certainly not pleasant, but we can also maintain the status quo for some period of time until Iran becomes more serious about allowing us to know that they're not conducting covert activity, that their research and development activities aren't moving to a place that accelerates their ability to create nuclear weapons, that we understand what their previous military dimensions were that stopped in 2003, so we have access to the scientists and others that were developing what we know at that time was a move towards a nuclear weapon. So, you know, I think Secretary Kerry's right. Let's get it right. But let's not rush to a place where we end up with a deal that does not stand the test of time and further destabilizes the region.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Senator, for joining us.